Have you ever realized that the person holding you back is yourself? Today I'll show you why self-doubt is not your identity. It's just a habit. And how you can finally break free and unleash your true potential. You are not born doubting yourself. No child enters this world questioning their worth, their voice, or their place. Watch a child take their first steps, they fall. They rise, they try again without shame. There is no inner voice telling them they are not good enough. That voice came later. And that is important to understand, because if self-doubt was learned, it can be unlearned. It began quietly. A comment that made you hesitate. A comparison that made you shrink. A moment where you tried, failed, and felt judged instead of supported. The mind records these moments not as memories, but as warnings. Slowly, the brain connects effort with pain, visibility with danger, expression with rejection, and without you realizing it, self-doubt becomes a survival strategy. Over time, repetition turns experience into belief. One discouraging voice becomes many. One failure becomes an identity. You stop remembering the moment you learned to doubt, and instead you assume it has always been there. But it hasn't. It was installed through environment, through patterns, through emotional conditioning. And the mind, once trained, keeps repeating what it thinks will protect you. That is why self-doubt feels so convincing. It sounds familiar. It speaks in your own voice. It appears right before you take a risk, right before you grow, right before you step into something new. But what it is really saying is not "you can't." It is saying, "This feels unfamiliar," and the brain dislikes unfamiliarity, even when unfamiliarity leads to expansion. Think about how many times you were capable but hesitated. How many opportunities passed not because you lacked ability, but because you paused long enough for doubt to speak. That pause was learned. That hesitation was practiced. And like any habit, it's strengthened through use. Here is the shift you must make. Stop asking, "What is wrong with me?" And start asking, "Where did I learn this?" The moment you trace self-doubt back to conditioning instead of character, it loosens its grip. You stop fighting yourself and start understanding yourself. You are not broken. You are trained. And training can be reversed. When you see self-doubt as a pattern rather than a personality, it no longer defines you. It becomes something you observe, not something you obey. Because the truth is simple and powerful. What was learned can be unlearned, and that is where your freedom begins. After self-doubt is learned, it doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It turns into a voice, one that speaks to you every day, often before you even realize you're listening. And here's the dangerous part. That voice does not sound like an enemy. It sounds like you. It uses your tone, your language, your memories. That's why you trust it. That's why you rarely question it. That inner critic did not appear overnight. It was shaped by repetition. Every time someone dismissed you, corrected you harshly, compared you to someone else, or made you feel small, the mind took notes. Not to hurt you, but to protect you. The brain decided that criticism was something to anticipate. So it created a voice that criticizes you first. It tells you not to speak up, not to try, not to aim too high, so that rejection doesn't catch you by surprise. In its own twisted way, self-doubt believes it is keeping you safe. But protection slowly turns into limitation. What once helped you avoid pain now prevents you from experiencing growth. The voice that says, "Don't do it, you'll fail," is the same voice that stops you from discovering how strong you actually are. And because it speaks early, before action, before courage, it often wins. Notice how this voice behaves. It never shouts. It whispers. It asks questions instead of making statements. What if you embarrass yourself? What if they judge you? Who do you think you are? These questions feel reasonable, responsible, even intelligent. But they are not neutral. They are fear wearing the mask of logic. The problem is not that this voice exists. Every human has it. The problem is that you mistake it for truth. You treat its warnings as facts instead of habits. You obey it without cross-examining it. And the more you listen, the stronger it becomes. Neural pathways deepen. Doubt becomes automatic. But here is the turning point. The moment you recognize that this voice is learned, not original, its authority weakens. You begin to separate awareness from commentary. You hear the doubt, but you no longer become it. You start to realize this is a pattern speaking, not my potential. The inner critic cannot survive observation. It thrives on identification. As long as you say, "This is me," it controls you. The moment you say, "This is something I learned," it loses power. You don't need to silence it. You just need to stop taking orders from it. Because once you stop confusing a conditioned voice with your true self, you create space for something stronger to speak, and that changes everything. At some point, self-doubt stops being just a thought and starts becoming a routine. It shows up at the same moments, in the same situations, with the same excuses. Before you speak, it's there. Before you act, it's there. Before you even finish imagining a better version of your life, it interrupts. And because it's consistent, you assume it's accurate. But consistency does not mean truth. It only means practice. Think about how habits are formed, not through one big decision, but through small repetitions. You didn't wake up one day and decide to doubt yourself forever. You repeated hesitation. You rehearsed fear. You replayed old failures. Over time, the brain learned a shortcut. Doubt first, avoid risk, stay familiar. And now it runs automatically without asking for permission. This is why self-doubt feels so natural. Not because it belongs to you, but because you've practiced it longer than confidence. You've given it more attention, more energy, more airtime. The mind simply followed what you kept feeding it. And the mind is loyal that way. It strengthens whatever you use most. But here's what most people never realize. If doubt can become a habit, confidence can too. Awareness can too. Courage can too. The brain does not care whether the pattern helps you or harms you. It only cares whether you repeat it. Right now, doubt fires quickly because you've trained it to. Confidence feels awkward because you haven't. And when something feels awkward, the mind labels it as wrong. That's the trap. Growth always feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. This is why waiting to feel ready never works. The habit doesn't break through thinking. It breaks through interruption. The moment you act slightly differently, speak once when you'd normally stay silent, try once when you'd normally retreat, you introduce a new pattern. And the brain notices patterns more than promises. You don't need to destroy self-doubt. You just need to stop rehearsing it. Stop giving it the microphone every time a decision appears. Let it speak if it wants, but move anyway. Action is the fastest way to retrain identity. Because identity follows behavior, not intention. And slowly something shifts. The doubt still appears, but it no longer decides. The pause between thought and action grows. That pause is power. In that space, you choose differently. And every time you do, you weaken the old habit and strengthen a new one. This is not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming practiced in moving forward despite fear. Because the person you think you need to become is not built through motivation. It's built through repetition. And the moment you change what you repeat, you change who you become. There is a moment most people never notice, and that moment quietly controls their entire life. It's the moment between a thought and a reaction. A doubt appears, and instead of questioning it, we obey it. We don't argue. We don't investigate. We just step back, stay quiet, or choose the safer road. And because this happens silently, it feels normal. It feels like that's just who I am. But that moment is not your identity. It's a habit playing itself out. The mind was never designed to protect your potential. It was designed to protect your comfort. It remembers embarrassment more vividly than success. It stores criticism longer than praise. So when an opportunity shows up, the mind rushes to warn you, not empower you. It says, what if you fail? Not because it knows you will, but because failure feels threatening to the ego. And when you listen without questioning, you train the mind to lead with fear. Here's the truth most people avoid. Self-doubt is not wisdom. It's familiarity. You've been listening to the same inner voice for years, so it sounds authoritative. But ask yourself honestly, has that voice built your life or has it kept it small? Has it expanded your world or narrowed it? If doubt were accurate, it would have protected you into happiness. Instead, it has protected you into stagnation. The power you're searching for doesn't come from silencing doubt. It comes from no longer treating it as a command. Doubt is a suggestion, not an order. It can speak, but it doesn't get to decide. The moment you stop arguing with it and start acting anyway, something changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but deeply. At first, acting despite doubt feels unnatural. Your heart races, your voice shakes, you feel exposed, and the mind says, see, this isn't you, but that discomfort is not proof of weakness, it's proof of rewiring. Every time you choose action over hesitation, you interrupt the old loop. And interruption is how habits break. Confidence is not built by thinking differently. It's built by surviving your own fear and realizing you didn't collapse. Each time you move forward without certainty, the mind updates its story. Slowly, quietly, it learns. Maybe we can handle more than we thought. And that belief becomes the new default. This is how identity shifts, not through affirmations, but through evidence. You become what you repeatedly do under pressure, and the more you choose courage in small moments, the less power doubt has in big ones. You don't need a new personality. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to stop letting an old habit speak for your future. And the moment you do, you don't just think differently, you step into who you've been all along. There's another layer to self-doubt that almost no one talks about, and it's the most dangerous one of all. It's not the loud fear that says, "You will fail." It's the quiet voice that says, "It's not the right time." This is the doubt that sounds reasonable. It disguises itself as patience, preparation, and logic, and because it feels mature, intelligent, even wise, we trust it without resistance. But most dreams don't die from fear. They die from delay. You tell yourself you'll start when you're more confident, more skilled, more ready. You'll speak when you're clearer. You'll act when the timing feels perfect. But what you don't realize is that confidence is not a requirement for action, it's a result of action. Waiting to feel ready is like waiting for warmth before lighting the fire. It never happens. Readiness is built in motion, not before it. The mind loves delay because delay feels safe. There's no risk in planning forever. There's no rejection in imagining success. There's no embarrassment in saying soon. But while you wait, life keeps moving. Opportunities don't pause to accommodate hesitation. They quietly pass, and then doubt uses that as evidence, saying, "See, you missed your chance." And the cycle tightens. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The people you admire didn't move because they were sure. They moved while unsure. They didn't defeat doubt. They disobeyed it. They took steps while their hands were shaking, while their voice trembled, while their mind screamed reasons to stop. And afterward, we call it confidence. But in the moment, it was courage disguised as discomfort. Self-doubt survives because it's never challenged. The first time you act despite it, the mind resists. The second time, it complains. The third time, it hesitates. And eventually, it adapts. The mind is a pattern recognition machine. When you repeatedly prove that doubt doesn't equal danger, it updates its rules. What once felt impossible begins to feel familiar. This is why small actions matter more than dramatic ones. You don't reprogram your identity by doing something heroic once. You do it by choosing courage in ordinary moments. Speaking when you want to stay silent. Starting when you want to wait. Trying when you want to retreat. Each small decision becomes a vote for the person you're becoming. And here's the shift that changes everything. Stop asking yourself, "Will this work?" And start asking, "What kind of person acts right now?" That question moves you out of fear and into identity. Because when you act in alignment with growth, even failure becomes progress. Even mistakes become proof of movement. You are not stuck because you lack ability. You're stuck because you've been listening to a habit that feels like truth. The moment you choose action over delay, doubt begins to lose its grip. And that moment is where your real power quietly wakes up. There comes a moment when you begin to realize that self-doubt isn't just something you feel, it's something you practice. Every time you hesitate, every time you talk yourself out of trying, every time you shrink your truth to fit someone else's comfort, you're rehearsing the same pattern. And patterns, repeated long enough, start to feel like personality. That's when it gets dangerous. Because now you don't just doubt yourself, you believe that doubt is you. But here's the shift that changes everything. Habits can be unlearned. And if self-doubt was learned through repetition, then confidence is built the same way, through deliberate, uncomfortable repetition in the opposite direction. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, but quiet decisions that say, "I will act even if my mind is unsure." Most people think they need a breakthrough moment to change. They wait for a surge of motivation, a sign, a push from the universe. But transformation doesn't come from moments. It comes from movements. Tiny ones, almost invisible ones. Choosing to speak one sentence you usually swallow. Taking one step you usually delay. Sharing one idea you usually keep hidden. These moments don't feel powerful when they happen. But later you look back and realize they rewired you. The mind learns through evidence, not affirmations, not promises, evidence. When you show up despite doubt, you give your mind proof that uncertainty is survivable. When you fail and don't collapse, you teach your nervous system that fear was exaggerating. And slowly, without ceremony, your internal story begins to change. At first, doubt will resist. It will say, "This isn't you." It will remind you of past mistakes. It will warn you about judgment, embarrassment, rejection. That's not intuition. That's habit fighting extinction. Because habits don't disappear quietly, they protest. And the louder the protest, the closer you are to change. What matters is not how you feel before action. What matters is how you move despite the feeling. Confidence doesn't arrive to escort you forward. It meets you after you take the step. And each time you choose action over avoidance, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. Eventually something subtle happens. You stop asking for permission, from others, from circumstances, from fear. You stop negotiating with doubt. You still hear it, but it no longer decides. And that's freedom. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to obey it. Because the moment you stop practicing, self-doubt is the moment you begin practicing your true self. Most people don't realize that doubt isn't just a mental state, it's a filter. It colors everything you see, every choice you make, every opportunity you notice or ignore. Doubt narrows your vision. It makes mountains out of molehills and opportunities invisible. It whispers, "You're not ready. You're not capable. This is too much for you." And over time, your life shrinks to fit the size of that whisper. You start avoiding challenges, hiding your potential, and settling for safety. It's subtle, but it's powerful. The quiet erosion of doubt can shape an entire lifetime without you even noticing. But here's the truth, that filter is not reality. It's perception. And perception can be retrained. The first step is awareness. When you notice yourself hesitating, resisting, or shrinking, don't push it away. Observe it. Ask, is this truth or is this habit talking? When you separate reality from doubt, you gain clarity. And clarity is the antidote to fear. The mind cannot cling to uncertainty when you shine the light of observation on it. Next comes action. The antidote to self-doubt is doing the very thing you fear you can't. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Start small. Speak up in a meeting. Share an idea you would usually hide. Take a risk that feels slightly uncomfortable. Each action sends a signal to your brain. I can handle this. The more you do it, the less power doubt has over you. Your mind starts rewiring itself with real evidence instead of imagined limitations. You also need to reframe failure. Doubt thrives on the fear of failure because you've been trained to see mistakes as proof of inadequacy. But what if you saw failure differently? What if you saw every stumble as a lesson, a necessary step in growth, proof that you're trying? When you shift your perspective, doubt loses its grip because it no longer controls the narrative. You become the narrator of your own story. Another critical point is surrounding yourself with reinforcement. The people, content, and environment you consume can either strengthen your doubt or weaken it. Surround yourself with examples of courage, resilience, and action. Learn from people who took steps despite fear and succeeded not because they lacked doubt, but because they acted anyway. This environment reminds your subconscious that growth is possible, that courage is a habit, and that you are capable of far more than your mind lets you believe. Finally, remember that this is a practice, not a one-time fix. Doubt will return in cycles. It is part of being human. The difference now is that you know how to respond. You observe it, act anyway. Reframe the experience and reinforce your courage over time. The habitual doubt that once shaped your life loses its authority, and in that space your true potential begins to shine. Because the moment you consistently act in spite of doubt, you don't just weaken it, you break its hold entirely, and you finally step into the life you were meant to live. Finally, understand that self-doubt is not permanent. It is a signal, not a sentence. It's a reflection of your mind clinging to the familiar, protecting you from what feels risky or unknown. But here's the truth. Nothing extraordinary happens inside comfort zones. Every person who achieved greatness, every life transformed, every breakthrough started the same way, with doubt. The difference was they didn't let it decide their actions. They recognized it, acknowledged it, and moved forward anyway. The most powerful step you can take is to embrace the discomfort that doubt brings. Lean into it, feel it fully, but don't let it guide your choices. When you act despite fear, you teach yourself that your potential is bigger than your hesitation. This is how habits are formed. The mind learns through repetition, and every time you act against self-doubt, you send a message to your subconscious that courage is stronger than fear. Over time, doubt becomes less frequent, less intense, and less controlling. It loses its power because your actions speak louder than the inner critic. Another crucial point is to redefine what confidence really is. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It's acting despite doubt. Waiting to feel ready or feel confident is the trap. The real growth happens in the act itself. Start small if you need to, but start. Speak your truth. Take that risk, make that decision. Each act of courage chips away at the habit of self-doubt. And the cumulative effect is life-changing. Because the mind begins to trust your actions more than its own fears. You also need to honor your progress, no matter how small. Often we measure courage by giant leaps and overlook the daily victories. Did you speak up when you usually wouldn't? Did you try something new? Did you face a fear instead of retreating? Each moment of action is proof that you are stronger than your doubts. Acknowledging these moments reinforces your belief in yourself and rewires the subconscious mind to expect action, not hesitation. Lastly, understand that breaking free from self-doubt isn't just about achieving goals, it's about reclaiming your life. Doubt doesn't just hold you back from success. It keeps you from fully experiencing your potential, your creativity, your impact. By consistently challenging doubt, you step into the fullness of who you are, revealing your strength, clarity, and purpose. Your life shifts from waiting for validation to creating it within yourself. Because when you finally act in alignment with your potential, despite doubt, you discover something incredible. You were never weak. You were just unaware. And now, for the first time, you are truly free. Remember this. You are not weak. You were just unaware. The power to change, to act, to rise has always been inside you. Start today and your future self will thank you.